Hello, everyone, and welcome to Techlore Talks 5. I am Henry from Techlore,
I'm Jonah from Techlore.
and today we're going to talk about the new Apple updates to continue our reputation of apparently being an Apple shilling channel. Um,
Absolutely.
yep. So these are pretty big updates, actually, and people are really shouting that it's very positive, and I think there are probably positive things, as I think Jonah does as well. But there's actually still a lot of problems, and so we want to talk about this, kind of get into the nuance, and a lot of people are touting this as a big win, and while I think it's overall a win, I don't think it's necessarily like the end of the fight, and I don't think Jonah does either. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Apple's recent announcements to roll out some form of end-to-end encryption on some of the things in iCloud, as well as some kind of key verification on iMessage. And what was the third thing?
They announced security key support for iCloud accounts. Why don't we start with the big one right off the bat, which is end-to-end encryption for iCloud services?
Cool. Do you want to give kind of the context of the problems beforehand, or do you want me to do that? So people have a history of like the problem with end-to-end encryption in iCloud.
Uh, why don't you go over that?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to go over kind of the history here to give everyone a breakdown for those who aren't aware. So in the past, some things in iCloud are end to end encrypted. For example, your passwords that are stored in iCloud are end to end encrypted, which means that that data can't be read by Apple. Things like iMessage are also encrypted. They're end to end encrypted. So you and the other person are the only people who can view your messages. A big problem in the past has been iCloud backups. So what Apple does is they take a whole copy of your phone, send it to iCloud, and that's not end-to-end encrypted. And you know what's stored inside of that backup? All of your iMessages, everything else that's stored on your phone. And so this has been a serious problem in the past, and it's led to a lot of law enforcement requests that just lead to people getting copies of each other's phones without, it's pretty much bypassing the end-to-end encryption. And so a big thing has been we've been requesting end-to-end encrypted backups for the longest time, as well as just by default end-to-end encrypting other things in iCloud, which should have been end-to-end encrypted in the first place. So that's kind of the context of this, and so that's why this is kind of a big announcement. So do you want to cover the things that the changes so far? I guess.
Yeah, so starting with the next version of iOS, which isn't out yet, it's out in beta right now, 16.2. iCloud Advanced Data Protection is going to cover pretty much everything in iCloud except for mail, contacts, and calendar, um, which is because those are built on like legacy technologies. They wouldn't be able to support third-party mail clients, that type of thing. So it's kind of a tricky problem to do for those. But for everything else, for backups, as well as photos and iCloud files, that's all going to be end-to-end encrypted if you enable their new advanced data protection program, which is it's an opt-in program basically.
And what is the downside? Like, why isn't this just a default for everyone? Why do people have to enable it?
Um, they've the claim that Apple's made pretty much this whole time for as to why they don't do end-to-end encryption at all before this announcement was because of potential data loss for people. I mean, if you lose your photos or your if you lose your phone and you can't get back into your iCloud account, you could lose your backups and photos and everything. So they were trying to prevent that. Um, at least is what they were claiming. What they've done with this update is they've made it so there's two different methods to recover your account now. You can set up a recovery key, which then you would have to save, and if you lose that, you wouldn't be able to recover your data. Or you can set up a recovery contact, which is like somebody else's Apple account, and if you get locked out of yours, you'd be able to um, use uh, get like a friend or family member to unlock your data for you and recover all your data. So I think the development of that is relatively recent, the whole recovery contact thing, and I think that's probably what enabled them to make this change. But there's still that risk of data loss, which is probably the main reason that right now they aren't like enforcing this for everybody.
Yes, and when you're enabling it, it also like gives some pretty massive disclaimers too from the screenshots I saw. Like, hey, you might lose your data
Yeah.
if you proceed with this feature and you don't, keep backups and you don't have a proper recovery method set up. Actually, you're the one who taught me, because by default, I don't think iCloud sets up a recovery key for you, which makes it somewhat easier to uh, get access to an iCloud account that might not be yours. And so that's just a pro tip for everyone is to go into your iCloud settings if you use iCloud and enable that recovery key option because it makes it a little bit harder to gain access to your data. So you're the one who taught me that.
Yep, you could actually do that before this, and that enabled the recovery of what was end-to-end encrypted before, which wasn't a lot. Now, when you enable this advanced data protection, it guides you through that process, so it'll bring you to that page where you can create a key, and it makes you do that, and it also suggests adding a recovery contact at the same time, so it lets you set up both right away when you turn it on. Um, so at least that will see more adoption, I assume.
Perfect. And I've already seen some discussion about people like, oh my God, they're not encrypting mail and calendar because they want to spy on your appointments and your emails. And you were talking about the legacy technology. Do you want to expand more on that for people who aren't aware of like how those technologies work?
Yeah, I mean, email and like calendar and contact sync, all of these technologies are built on like really old, like beginning of the internet type of web standards, basically, where like there's so much backwards compatibility and like legacy software involved in that space. It's really hard to build like a secure platform on top of it, which is why like usually we don't even recommend email at all for like a primary method of secure communication, because even with encryption technologies like PGP, there's so much that's unencrypted throughout the whole chain of communication that's avoided if you use like a modern messenger like Signal. And it's the reason that um, encrypted email providers like Proton Mail, they don't work well with third-party clients. You have to use like their web interface or something like that, or you can use like their bridge program that kind of like converts it from encrypted to plain text on your computer. But it's 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 a pretty big hassle to kind of convert all of that stuff to modern encryption, and it's to me it's understandable that they didn't try and like tackle that, but I certainly wouldn't be recommending people use iCloud Mail, obviously.
What do you mean? You're not using iCloud Mail for fun?
I'm not, no. I think there's a lot better solutions out there. I think sticking with something like Proton Mail is probably the way to go for that stuff. But
That's
for
actually
everything else,
sorry,
yeah,
I didn't mean to jump in there, but I think it's actually the cool thing is like if you are on in the Apple ecosystem, you just enable this end-to-end encryption on your entire iCloud account. And if you're using Proton, they already cover the other few things now. You have Proton
right,
Calendar, Proton Mail, and Proton kind of has pretty crappy contact integration with. I don't think it's great. It doesn't like properly integrate with system stuff properly. I haven't had much
yeah.
luck with it, but it seems like it's kind of there. And I guess Proton Drive kind of loses a little bit of rep after this.
Yeah, a bit because I mean, obviously we're still waiting for Proton Drive sync clients. They don't exist on any platform right now.
Well,
So,
now they do on iOS apparently, but I don't know if it's like live
well,
syncing or it's just
yeah,
a
there's no
client.
there's no syncing functionality. It's basically just the web interface in an app. I would like to see like photo sync if that was added to Proton Drive. I think that would be like a
That'd be
huge
awesome.
benefit, but not yet. We'll see. We'll see what they release next year, right?
Or a few years.
Yeah, who knows?
Okay, good to know. So you mentioned on Signal, we have a privacy peeps chat where we have lots of cool privacy people there. And you were kind of mentioning that you still had some issues with this end-to-end encrypted iCloud thing. So what are those?
Yeah, so this was something that was brought up on the Privacy Guides forum, and I've seen a couple of people talking about it, but it doesn't seem to be getting a whole lot of attention, and that's um, kind of encryption around like certain metadata for files in iCloud Drive and photos that isn't end-to-end encrypted, or it's end-to-end encrypted in a way that could potentially let Apple like or an attacker know what files you might have. So let me find the post here really quick. According to Apple's iCloud security guide, they say that some metadata and usage stored in iCloud remains under standard data protection even when advanced data protection is enabled. For example, dates and times when a file or object was modified are used to sort your information, and checksums of a file or photo data are used to help Apple deduplicate and optimize your iCloud and device storage. So the use of those checksums to deduplicate information in the cloud, even when it's encrypted, is called convergent encryption, and that has some notable issues. Uh, that could let an attacker like know what you have. So obviously, if your file is encrypted, and somebody's trying to read it, they're not going to be able to without your key. But if somebody has a copy of that same file, um, then they'd be able to calculate like the checksum of that file and see that you also have a copy. So like if they know what the file is beforehand, they would be able to go into iCloud and see all of the accounts who also have that file, which could come up in a variety of different situations you could imagine.
Yeah, I assume
Um,
that could be a powerful CSAM tool as well. If Apple ever did want to roll out CSAM, they can have this end-to-end encryption with CSAM by checking checksums of photos, correct?
I was thinking about that, and that would definitely be possible if they wanted to do that, scanning server side. The thing is, with photos, what they claim to save is the raw byte checksum of the photo or video. So typically, when you're thinking about photos, there's two types of checksums that usually come up. It's either the raw checksum, which is just the checksum of that file that only will relate to that file, or there's like perceptual hashes which like Microsoft Photo DNA use, where they can like detect very similar photos. And for a lot of CSAM scanning technologies, what they do is they use perceptual hashes, because like even a very slight modification of the original file is going to change the raw byte checksum of that photo and make it like completely different. So it's really hard to scan for CSAM if you just have that information, because any modification to the file would make it like unidentifiable, basically. What I'm trying to say is, it is, it's not exactly what the CSAM scanning that Apple was doing before was doing. Um, that was scanning for perceptual hashes,
Got it.
for similar files to the database, not like exact matches. Um,
Got it. And so what I'm hearing here is that this overall is a big improvement for people who opt into this regarding the amount of data that Apple is able to directly get about them. But there are still the metadata concerns.
mhm.
And for people with higher threat models, that might pose risk to them. Is that a good way of summarizing that?
Absolutely, yeah. I think that that makes sense. It's something you'd have to keep in mind. There are some like different attacks that you can use against convergent encryption models that you would have to figure out whether they might apply to you, um, before deciding if it's safe or not to use.
I think it's also safe for people who are wondering, does that apply to me? If you're asking that question, it probably doesn't. Most likely, maybe you are in a situation where that actually would be very relevant to you. But I think for most people, you're probably safe not having to worry about that. My opinion. That's not something I'm going to be worrying about. I know that for sure.
Probably.
Oh, I did want to quickly ask a question about the end-to-end encrypted thing. Two questions, actually. One, I think you're the one, or maybe I saw this on Mastodon, where Ava, the head security, head chief of security at the EFF, was quoting some kind of interview where Apple formally said they're no longer wanting to roll out CSAM.
Yep.
So that's my first question. Did I read that correctly? Is there more
Uh,
nuance to the story?
no, that is what I read. They've scrapped their plans to do any kind of like client side scanning at the moment. So there's not going to be any scanning on your phone of information that's being uploaded to iCloud. They're still doing the stuff that they were doing with iMessages. I don't know if you remember that, where it was like scanning, like parents could opt into that and it would scan like their children's messages and stuff. But none of that ever gets reported to Apple. That's all like locally on your device. It'll show a warning, but it won't like report to Apple any information about your data. So it's technically not breaking end-to-end encryption in that case either.
Got it. And then the second question I had was, um, there is always, I don't know how official this was, but there's that story that came out maybe a few years ago now about how the reason Apple never rolled out end-to-end encrypted iCloud backups was because there was pressure from the FBI and other government agencies to not roll this out, because that was a very common vector that they would utilize to gain access to people suspects data without needing to directly break the phones.
Hmm.
what does this update mean for that? Because I guess that might there's different interpretations. Did Apple just say screw it, we're going to roll it out anyway? Was that story never true in the first place? I don't think we're going to know. I'm just wondering if you had any thoughts.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that that could go. I've seen some stories coming out recently that like the FBI isn't very happy with this change, from what I've heard. I've also seen a lot of different reasons why maybe it's not such a big deal that Apple is doing this nowadays. I mean, iOS vulnerabilities are becoming more common, I think, and there might be other ways that like law enforcement can get into a phone if they want to now. Um, that maybe this is becoming less relevant. Um, or it could just be Apple just going ahead and doing this anyways, uh, without the government's approval. But I'm not really sure. I think we'll we'll never really know the real reasons behind this.
I mean, maybe if you keep shilling Apple hard enough, maybe they'll hire you. You can rise up the
Yeah.
ranks, go
Yes.
through the file cabinets, and be like, "Oh, I finally have an answer."
Hmm. You'll be the first to know.
Perfect, thank you. I'll hold you to that. Do you want to cover the security keys second or the iMessage thing?
Yeah, we can talk about the security keys. The second thing that they announced during this like big security update announcement was that they're going to be launching support for security keys for your iCloud account, which is long overdue in my opinion. So that's going to be starting next year, and it's pretty self-explanatory. If you opt in, you'll be able to add your security key, and that'll be required. We'll have to see. Um, I don't think they've said anything about like whether like what backup options are going to be available. If you're going to be able to disable everything and only have security keys, or if they're going to make you keep like the the codes or the SMS as a backup. I don't know what exactly they're going to do when they implement that. We'll have to see when it releases next year, but um, that's definitely going to be a big security improvement, I think. Did you have anything to
No,
say about that?
I was gonna ask you about that. If there was any information on if it was gonna be an annoying GitHub situation where in order to have a security key you have to keep TOTP enabled, or a Proton situation. That one I'm still upset about.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
super
absolutely that
annoying.
one.
Yeah, what's the point of rolling out? Like, I still get the point because like the point of a security key is to prevent a phishing attack. That there's lots of
Hmm.
points, but that's the main one. That's the main
Yeah.
selling point is to prevent a phishing attack. So as long as you're always choosing to log in with your security key, you are mostly getting the benefit from it.
Hmm.
But still, it still kind of like devalues the point of a security key when you always have a TOTP option available.
Absolutely. No, I just got an email from Proton like 2 days ago, and it was about like their security key update. I don't know why they just sent it again, but it was like we've replaced the need for you to have TOTP, and I was like, oh, maybe they've updated it, so you don't need TOTP anymore. No, you still need it enabled.
It's infuriating.
It's yeah,
But
bothers
that's
me.
kind of like Proton in a nutshell. It's like they release something cool, but it's only cool when you look at it from one direction. But if you take three steps right and you move to your phone, oh, it's not the same experience. You can't just walk all the way around the feature and get the same experience. It's always kind of like this, you know.
Okay, this just reminded me of another thing about Proton that annoys me with these security keys.
Okay, go for it.
They also don't support passkeys.
Oh, they
They
don't.
they support passkeys. Like if you try to add a key, it'll let you add a passkey. It will not let you log in with a passkey.
Wait, that
So if
seems
you,
dangerous. Can you get locked out?
that's exactly what I think, and it's what I told them, and they told me that that was intentional behavior. And they were like, "No, we don't support passkeys." I was like, "Okay, but you could lock yourself out," and they did not reply to that. So
That's
that's just a thing that could happen. But I guess you can't really be locked out because they force you to
TOTP.
keep TOTP enabled. So
Yep.
silver lining there. Um, I guess as far as Apple's implementation, I'll be interested to see if they're going to support passkeys,
I mean,
because they didn't mention it.
I figured they. I actually, you're right. You would think that they would just call it pass keys.
Right, they're saying security keys specifically. All of their like photos of it are showing physical security keys, so I'm not sure what they're going to do. I know that, I mean, we know other companies aren't supporting passkeys yet for one reason or another. Google still doesn't, as far as I know. You still need like a physical security key, or you have to use their like proprietary app on your phone for your phone to act as a security key. So
Well,
who knows?
what's interesting to me is a passkey is pretty much the same thing as what they already have in a way. Because right now, if you try to log into a new Apple device and it's like putting in your Apple iCloud information, you get a pop up on all your other devices asking with a code. But a passkey would just automate that. It's still the same thing.
Right.
It's like checking your other devices, and then maybe you could tap the screen for a passkey. Is that how? I actually have not used passkeys yet. Is it like, does it prompt you like when you're logging in on a new device?
With passkeys, it shows like a QR code on the device, and you scan it with your phone camera.
Got it. And that's how you log in every time?
Yes.
Got it. So all this is doing is like, it's the same. Instead of typing in a code, you'd be scanning a QR code, but it seems like it's the same effective thing, right? Or am I missing something
Right.
here?
But I think it's possible that they won't support passkeys just because passkeys are stored in your iCloud keychain, and if you need access to your iCloud keychain in order to log into your Apple account, it's kind of a catch-22 there. They're probably not thinking about other passkey implementations, I assume, which do exist, but
Interesting. Well, I guess we'll have to see then. But
we'll find out.
I am a huge security key shill since I've been like getting into mine. It's so much more convenient than TOTP because like you
Yeah,
just do tap, you're in.
this is what I
Um,
told you years ago when you were a TOTP show. So glad you finally unboxed those UV keys that they sent you.
oh my god, I still haven't reviewed them. I feel terrible when people ship us things and it takes us a while to review them. As I have like four phones to the left of me on this table that are unreviewed, coming soon.
Well, I need to become a security key shell again. I've been using them less and less lately, but I just got three new ones, so I'll have to set them all up. It's just a lot of work
Yeah, I
going
believe
through all
it.
my accounts.
Yeah, it is,
So,
and at least not
I'll,
probably a lot of accounts support it.
yeah. But when iCloud supports it, that'll definitely be like my wake up call if I don't get to it before then, because I definitely want to get that secured.
Hmm. All right, and then the last thing is iMessage. Oh, actually, before we move to the iMessage thing, I did just want to in Apple's official blog post about all of these things, they say today, with more than 95% of active iCloud accounts using this protection meaning the security that this protection meaning 2FA, which they rolled out in 2015. It is the most widely used two-factor account security system in the world that we're aware of, which I thought was like a weird claim. Like I does Apple have that many iCloud accounts to the point where 95% of them means that that is the most used 2FA in the world? More than like
I
Google?
I would assume so. I mean, it's not mandatory for Google yet, is it?
I don't think so, but they make it like they bug you a lot, you know? But I guess Apple might bug people more because
I
95% is
wonder.
a high number.
I mean, Apple forces you to at the moment. I'm actually surprised that um,
It's not 100.
it's not 100%. I'm trying to figure out how
Maybe they
maybe
didn't
they
always require it and people just never updated
they
after
definitely
2015.
didn't always require it, and I thought they made you. But I guess if you,
Just ignored the account forever.
well, it says active though.
Oh,
I guess if you're actively using your iCloud account on like a 6-year-old operating system and just never upgrade it, then maybe you could get around it. Because I feel like you need 2FA to use like a modern operating system, but there's certainly people out there that are running like OS X El Capitan or something. So who knows?
yeah, interesting. I just
That
thought it
is
was an interesting
interesting,
stat.
but I would imagine that's the case. I mean, they're the most used phone in America. And we both know America is the whole world, so
Yeah, I was like, what's that mean? Like, it's like the least popular like everywhere else mostly. So not the least, but like the iOS versus Android market
second
share
most.
outside of the US
I
is not
mean,
great for Apple.
there's still I think it is still pretty good for Apple, isn't it?
I think
I don't know. Now I'd have to look it up. What's
I
like
think I think
worldwide?
it's something like 80% of them are like Android. Yeah, 71% is Android.
Hmm.
But iOS is rising.
Yeah, it
The,
definitely is.
the last few years and like since 2018, it looks like Android has been losing market share and iOS is gaining market share pretty significantly. In 2018, iOS was at 20%, and now it's at 27% in 2022.
Hmm.
So they've gone up 7% in like a few years. So,
It is a weird statement. It's such a classic Apple statement to say like it's the most widely used two-factor account security system in the world that we're aware of.
yeah, like what do you mean that you're aware of? Does that mean it's true or not?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, we really have no way of knowing. But to their credit, it is a lot. And they do
yeah.
force it, which is good. And more people should probably follow in those footsteps and enforce 2FA for their accounts.
What would happen if Facebook just made a PSA that's like, "Oh, hey, Apple's lying. We actually have the most 2FA." And then it opens like a whole like lawsuit over who has the most 2FA in the world.
Apple, that's why they said that we're aware of. Apple will just be like, oh, we didn't know.
Yeah, their lawyers are like, "Please add these few
Yeah.
words." All right, sorry, I got sidetracked. Let's go into the iMessage thing.
Yeah.
All right, so the iMessage contact key verification. iMessage has always had end-to-end encryption. That's not new, but now they're going to have almost a verification system in place so that you can verify that who you're talking to is the person you're talking to. So for those who have used Signal, for example, when someone gets Signal on a new device, it alerts you that the safety number has changed. For those who don't understand safety numbers, I wrote a quick guide on it on our forum that I'll leave below to kind of explain safety numbers because even technical people that I know and have tried talking to on Signal didn't quite understand how safety numbers work. So I made that guide also for myself so that when I get people on Signal and I'm onboarding them, I can be like, hey, let's verify safety numbers. Here's a guide I wrote because I didn't find like a good guide online that explained it well. Um, but to get back on track here, iMessage is going to have that as well. So there's a screenshot on the Apple blog post here, and there's a little warning that says an unrecognized device may have been added to Jenny's account. And so it essentially is warning you that this other person has a new device that's unrecognized, and it's probably worth checking in to see, if someone might have compromised the session in any way on like the server end. That's what they're trying to target here. Definitely more of a higher threat model thing, honestly, for a lot of people. But yeah, did I miss anything there? I kept it
No,
pretty
I
not
think that
technical.
totally makes sense. Yeah. Um, I'm interested to see it, like how that what an unrecognized device means. Like how are they like when are they going to send the warning? Because it doesn't sound like they're going to send it every time somebody logs into uh a new device. It's only like uh what they say is if an exceptionally advanced adversary were ever to succeed breaching cloud servers and inserting their own device. I don't know how they're gonna make that differentiation.
Yeah, it's pretty vague. It
Yeah.
doesn't. They don't even say if like they even show you like a safety number or anything to verify in the conversation.
They
Do they?
do say that. So you're going to be able to compare like a contact verification code in person on FaceTime or through another secure call
Oh,
is what
that's
they say.
cool. That's cool.
So there will be a comparison system. So that is very good.
Cool. Where'd you see that?
It's in their newsroom announcement. It's the last sentence of that paragraph.
God. Oh, I missed that. Yep. Users can compare a contact verification code. Oh, we can even. Oh, you can compare it on FaceTime too.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. Well, you hope FaceTime's not compromised also. Um, um, that's really cool though. That's all good stuff. And
It
Yeah.
is good because that was like if you ask people about like the problems with iMessage end-to-end encryption, that is the main one, is the contact discovery system. So currently as it stands, it's end-to-end encrypted, but you get the other person's like their public key from Apple's server. And Apple's server could decide to send you a key that they have access to if they wanted to, which could compromise like all of your future messages. So this is what that's going to prevent. It's going to prevent like Apple server from sending you keys that don't belong to the intended recipient. You'll be able to compare them yourself now. So
Got it. That
long
makes a lot of
overdue.
sense. Yeah, I like that. And obviously, it's not going to be anywhere near as nice as Signal or something like that, but this is still
Right.
a huge step
And it's
forward.
not cross-platform. This is mostly for the Americans, I think. Nobody else uses iMessage.
Yeah. At this point, it's like for me, all contacts are either iMessage or Signal.
Hmm.
And with things like this, that's why it's kind of exciting. Like even though all of my most sensitive things go through Signal and like Proton and all these other third-party services that I rely on, the things that have to be used as a backup via things like iCloud or all these things that I generally don't recommend or even want to use, those things are getting a nice bump in security as well. And that's still a win for everyone, because just because like Apple's not competing against the absolute best services on the market, it's still upping the bar, the
Yeah,
bottom bar,
absolutely. I
I
mean,
guess.
more people are always going to be using iCloud than Signal or Proton Mail, right? So
And Proton
making
Drive.
absolutely Proton Drive. So making these security tools accessible to them is it's good to set like an industry standard, right? Like it's raising the bar for all of these companies basically. Like this is what the new standard of security is. Um, that being said, all three of these things, including that iMessage contact key thing, they're all opt-in. So a lot of people, I think, still won't take advantage of them probably because a lot of people don't change their default settings. But um, at least options are always good. It's a good first step for sure.
Yeah, and so two things now that you said that. One, it's interesting because now we're starting to see Apple release a lot of these security and privacy features like lockdown mode and some of the other things we are talking about, like the safety check, whatever that was. Like if you were in a
Yeah, that
situation.
like privacy checkup, I think it's called,
Yeah, something
right?
like that. But all of these features are all opt in.
Hmm.
So that's not a very Apple thing to do. Like historically. Historically, Apple's like, we're going to roll something out and we want it to be rolled out to everyone. And now they're starting to roll out all of these like kind of sophisticated features that are opt in for people and it gives people an option, which is kind of cool. I could be
Right.
wrong. I just, like off the top of my head, I can't think of any other situations where Apple's given like a cool security feature that's opt in.
No, it's definitely new, but they've never really gone like above the minimum standard like this before. Like all of their services have been pretty like they haven't been bad for privacy or security, but they haven't been like exceptional in any way. And all of these are like it brings it closer to the like top of the line product, like end-to-end encryption.
Got it.
Like nobody else at like none of the major providers like Google are offering that for things like photos right now, right? So it makes sense. I think that data loss argument probably makes a lot of sense for people. Um, you see that they're in all of these like press releases about like lockdown mode and about the contact key verification and about end-to-end encryption. They're very they're like stressing the fact that
It's
these
extreme.
protect against advanced adversaries. Like they're not threats that a lot of people are going to face, and I think they don't want. I think what Apple doesn't want, because some of these features can be potentially destructive, is they don't want people to use them unless they understand them, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's the main thing. I think they expect that not everyone is going to understand how advanced data protection works in the first place, and they don't want to like encourage that use if you don't have a technical understanding of it.
Got it. And the second thing I wanted to bring up is, I guess, takeaways for people listening, which is on this note. Should people listening enable this when it's released? Should they do all these things? Who is it for? Who is it not for? I think if they listen to this whole thing, they can probably come to a pretty good conclusion themselves. But do you want to summarize kind of the main arguments for and against and who these features are probably for?
Absolutely. I'm interested in hearing your take on this, but I think it's probably similar to what your take was on lockdown mode, which is that I think that if you're watching this, you might as well turn it on. I don't think there's going to be a lot of harm in using these options. You're not losing a lot of functionality with any of these. Everything is going to work exactly the same. So as long as like you save that recovery key somewhere, there's no downside to it, and it's a really easy way to improve your security on Apple's system. Like I'm sure you're going to turn it on, for example. I can't really think of a reason not to, um, as long as you can be sure that either you can keep that recovery key safe or you can set up like a recovery contact that you trust. And in either of those cases, I think there'd be no reason not to recommend doing it.
Yeah, that's how I felt about lockdown mode too. Is like, as long as there's not a feature that lockdown mode disabled that you completely relied on, which I don't even know what that would be, like iMessage games or something.
Yeah.
I just couldn't find a reason not to just tell people like, yeah, just enable it because why
Mhm.
not? And I don't normally say that because normally I only want to make improvements to my own privacy and security journey if there's a real reason to, because normally that comes at the cost of something else. And so, like, sure, I can make my characters 400 characters long. Sorry, did I say characters? I can make my passwords 400 characters long, and like that's not a huge inconvenience because I'm using a password manager and it's easy to copy and paste things. But what happens when I'm logging into a new device that doesn't have copy and paste yet, and I have to manually type out my password? What happens then? And so, and like the trade-off isn't like the entropy between a 100 versus a 400 character password. They're both like extremely high entropy, and like the 100 character
Right.
password isn't going to be cracked anytime soon. And so, like, yes, improving things for the sake of improving things isn't generally a reason to improve things. But in this scenario, it's like lockdown mode is improving things at not really much of a cost. So, like, turn it on. And
Hmm.
also, it's easy to like go back too. You can just switch off the toggle and move right back to without being on lockdown. And this one might be a little bit. Are there any downsides to just? Can you disable?
You can definitely disable it. I don't know of any. I mean, as long as you have access to your keys, you can disable it. I can't think of any uh, downsides.
Okay, yeah. So there you go. I'm on the same page as you then. I mean, there's nothing that we read off today that if you don't have the means of enabling it and turning it on to not do it, as long as you do it properly and you understand like the risks involved with some of the features. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's all good stuff. One question to ask you, because I know we always get these comments. It's like, so I might as well like let's talk about this. How do you feel this fits into the entire Apple ecosystem? Because Apple is doing all these things, right? They're releasing lockdown mode. They're trying to really push out these high level security privacy features, right? And while
Sure.
they're doing that, they're not even like properly anonymizing or randomizing advertising IDs across. Like this came out recently that I'm sure you saw that like it turns out that they have a unique identifier attached to your advertising ID even when you opt out of it on all of the main apps like the App Store and Apple Music and things like that. So how do you feel about that? Because that I think that's a valid criticism. It's like, oh, Apple can't be private and secure because they do this one thing. But how do you feel like this fits in the entire Apple ecosystem, just as a whole? Because like obviously, like Apple's not perfect, but it
Right.
seems, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird way to word the question. I think you're kind of unaware of where I'm getting at here.
Yeah. I really think that people just need to evaluate like what's important to them. I don't think that anyone is going to be making the claim that end-to-end encryption on iCloud is going to be replacing specialized tools like Proton Mail, for example, or Proton Drive, or like standard encryption. Because there are like some catches that Apple has made some compromises in order to make this pretty much as seamless as possible. You enable this, and there's absolutely no change to your user experience, and all of your stuff is encrypted in the cloud, more or less. Um, so I think like there's still obviously a market for like dedicated security tools out there. That's not going to be going away because of this. But for people who are already using like all of these iCloud services in the Apple ecosystem, especially, it's a big improvement in my opinion.
Is there anything else on your mind? Questions or
Um, related to this.
Could be
Have you
anything,
seen
I
the
guess.
Have you seen the Raspberry Pi stuff on Mastodon lately?
I quickly checked Mastodon like a few minutes before I ran, and I didn't have time to read into it. What happened?
Okay, it's just ridiculous. There's
What
just so
happened?
much ridiculous stuff going on. Um, they they posted this post on Mastodon of all places, and it
Raspberry
started
Pi?
with, yeah, Raspberry
Okay.
Pi. The first sentence: "We hired a policeman, and it's going really great." So, given the audience on Mastodon, first of all, you can probably imagine why people weren't a fan of that. And then they went to this, and then they posted this like blog post about this person that they hired. And he had basically been like working in the surveillance department of like the UK police for like 15 years or something, and he built like surveillance systems um, with like Raspberry Pis and stuff. And now he's working for the Raspberry Pi Foundation. And this wasn't even the worst part. It was um, people were replying to this like, "What? Why are you like super excited that this guy is building surveillance products with your platform?" And they've been just posting very dismissive like comments to everyone, and they've been blocking people like wildly, like like on Mastodon. It's just been like a total like social media disaster. Basically, they've handled it really badly, and like they've been posting like conspiracy theories now. Like literally, their director of social communications has been like, "We're pretty sure there's like a forum or Discord behind like all of these negative comments that we're seeing, and we don't think it's about the police. We think it's about this other post that we made about like." Um, it doesn't even make any sense. It's insane. Okay, wait.
I didn't hear about
Listen.
any of this.
Okay, listen to this paragraph from this is a BuzzFeed news article that just came out. Liz Upton, Raspberry Pi's co-founder and chief marketing officer, told BuzzFeed she believes that much of the issue stems not from the hiring of the former police officer who admitted to using Raspberry Pis for covert surveillance, but instead from a picture the account posted to Mastodon a day earlier showing pigs in a blanket. We didn't put a content warning on it because we don't put a content warning on meat, Upton said. There were quite a few people who tried to start dogpiling on that. So apparently they think that that's the main issue.
It's the
that,
vegans.
it's the vegans.
Always blame the vegans. It's
So I think that gives you maybe a sense of how poorly that they're responding to this to this criticism online.
That's pretty funny. I
It's
didn't
it's
hear about that.
really it's really funny.
Wow. That's not good for them.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I can't even imagine why they would do any of this.
This is from
Like this is an
unfathomable.
entirely self-made problem. It makes zero sense to me
It's,
whatsoever.
it's unhinged behavior, is what it is.
It truly is. It truly is.
Well, it makes me feel better that I don't think I would ever do that. So I'm like, yeah,
Do
go
what?
me, I guess, or maybe I will do that someday. Oh, hey, we decided that like in order to best understand the U.S. surveillance state, we wanted to hire an employee who's in surveillance to help us out making privacy and security content.
We hired like a general who was responsible for drone strikes overseas or something.
Everyone gets mad. Oh, they're mad because yesterday I talked about how I didn't want to open an OnlyFans. That's the real problem here. We've been slow. Actually, Dad, I forgot to mention that at the beginning. So if you're listening this far in, it's been a slow few weeks back here. Not much content. Juggling school, juggling personal stuff, juggling trying to get back into work, and then every time I do, I fall back off. So yeah, I gave all of you a break until December. It's like a couple weeks off, I think, and then it's now December 9th recording this. So I guess
Yeah,
everyone got an extra 1+ weeks until I was kind of able to come back.
but we're back in the swing of things, right?
Yeah, Techlore Talks 5.
Yeah.
You've been watching the new season of Rick and Morty?
I have actually. What was the last episode that just came out? Was it the Sun one?
Yes, it was the Sun one.
Yeah. This has been a good season, I would say.
It's better than 5, I
Um,
think.
Better than five. I think it's better than four. So like we're really on an upswing for sure. Like every episode I've enjoyed this season.
I'm with you. I think I like it better than 5 and 4 as well. I did like the Sun one.
The vat of acid callback.
Oh, I didn't catch that.
You remember the vat of
Yeah,
acid
that's like one of
episode
my
though, right?
favorites. Yeah.
That at the end when they jumped into the sun, and then
Oh.
and then they were telling the story and they tested the sun with a ladle to make sure it wasn't fake sun.
You know what? You know why? You know why? I'm so silly. I didn't finish the episode.
What?
I was watching it when I was no, hear me out, hear me out. I was watching it going to bed, which I don't normally do. I don't like being on screens before bed. But I had a really long day. I wanted to relax before I went to bed, and so I put it on, but I was dozing off and I got like 80% of the way through the episode and I just closed it and went to bed. And I for some reason told myself I finished the episode, and now that you mention it, I'm like, "Wait, I never finished that episode." So I need to actually finish that episode.
Oh
I guess
man,
I liked most of the episode then.
it was a good episode.
And now you spoiled it.
Yeah, spoiled it for you, but you told me you watched it, so
You should have known.
I should have known when you were so confused. Because how could you possibly miss such a punchline? It's been like a month, Henry.
Yeah, it's been a while. But I think people are going to like us back. Especially after the last one that I don't think was as popular as the others.
Was it not? I don't know. I don't keep track of this
That
stuff.
was the censorship Elon Musk
Oh
Twitter
yeah.
one.
Well, very. There's some hot takes, maybe.
People loved that one. They were all over it.
Hmm.
It's actually funny. Like I think the people I heard a lot of positive things about that one, but also a lot of negative things, as you could expect.
Yeah, I do too. Definitely along the lines of that ditching Twitter video that you made, I'm sure.
Yeah. I haven't checked to see how that one's doing. We hit 200K though. You guys saw that
Yeah,
before I did.
that's exciting. Somebody on Discord saw it, and then I stole their screenshot and sent it in the chat.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and maybe I'll look up. I don't remember who said that. I can't find the chat now. I
Everything's so
won't
different now.
mention. Everything has changed.
Everything's changed. I just look at the world differently. This 100,000 subscriber plaque that I'm looking at right now, it means
Ugh.
nothing to me.
You gotta get a little bit further before that can mean nothing to you. You gotta get a gold plaque. Come on.
Yeah, I know.
Any day now, though, I'm sure.
Maybe
It's
next
just gonna
week.
take off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that unboxing,
It's gonna
maybe
be this Techlore Talks is gonna blow up and take us to 1 million.
to 1 million.
Because that's why we
Yeah,
do
I'm
these
sure.
Techlore Talks, for performance.
For the performance, the views, and the fame. Really.
Uh-huh. This is kind of fame for you.
Uh, is it?
Maybe.
I
You
mean,
are
I do
getting
have
kind of
more.
famous. You're now Mastodon famous.
I am Mastodon famous. I have more followers than you, so
For now.
well, forever, I think.
No. No.
I'm just double checking one thing. I do have more followers than Techlore on Mastodon.
Oof. Oof.
That's gotta hurt, doesn't it?
A little bit.
I don't have more followers than Privacy Guides. No, wait, I do, but they're catching up. That's my real threat. Is myself.
My only competition is myself anymore.
Yeah,
Well,
you're not
catch
putting up
us.
much of a fight.
Yeah.
Okay, what?
You got to catch us on YouTube.
Yeah, subscribe to my channel, please. It's youtube.com/JohnnyOragon.
And all it does is link to these Techlore Talks.
And all it does is link to these Techlore talks, yeah.
Thanks everyone for tuning in. We don't know when the next Techlore Talks is. We kind of originally said this was going to be a weekly thing. We're not doing that anymore. This is now we'll try to do it weekly thing, but it might be a bi-weekly thing or maybe a 10-day thing. Depends on the week, depends on how we're feeling, depends on the stories that come out too. This Apple thing came out and we instantly messaged like, oh yeah, this is a Techlore Talks kind of thing. So that's the other thing too. If there are ever any discussions that you want to see, like a new story comes out and you're like, ooh, it would be fun for this to be a discussion, leave a comment, or in our communities are the best place to have us see things, because comments, not it's not super foolproof, but like if you really want to see us talk about something, leave it on our forum or something like that so that we can see that you want to see us talk about something. Just final announcements: join our forum. It's a great place to talk with other people in the privacy and security world. um Thanks everyone for helping us hit 200K. I guess this is probably going to be the first video we publish since hitting 200K, so I'm officially saying thank you. And thank you, Jonah, for your time. And thanks everyone for listening this far, and we will see you next time on Techlore Talks 6.